Good afternoon and welcome into the Pacers Podcast Show. I'm Kyle Newman, your host.
And I'm Rhett Hensley, your co-host.
We have a great lineup for the next hour. We will talk about the final 2 draft workouts for the Pacers, discuss trade situations for Roy Hibbert if he opts in, have an interview with my brother TJ Neumann, and chat about Paul George playing the power forward position. Rhett Hensley, good afternoon, 17th Pacers Podcast Show. How are you doing today, my man?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm looking forward to the Pacers Podcast Show.
That's what I like to hear, my man. Me too. Ready to talk some sports, talk some Pacers.
Oh, yeah. I'm ready. How are you doing today, Kyle?
You know, I'm doing just fine. Cup of coffee in my hands. Hopefully going to play some golf today. I got to practice up because I'm coming
you sure
for
do.
you. Folks,
Yeah,
he's on.
Keep trying.
He's on quite the streak right now. I believe he has 2 cards from playing me. 2 rounds in a row that he's beaten me and kept the scorecards. He's on a serious roll.
Was it like 12 games?
Oh, so by 2, I guess I mean 12.
Are you ready to
I know. It's sad, but it's very
He's trying to
true.
save himself.
Yes, I am. But nonetheless, it is a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day to talk sports, and let's get right into this, right? But before we do, it is worth mentioning, a couple shows ago, we did talk about the first 4 pre-draft workouts for the Pacers. On one of them, Rhett and I had a little slip-up. We did not realize that the first pre-draft workout happened to be from last year with Jake Odom and James Michael McAdoo. It was our mistake. Thank you for putting up with us. They are currently, at least McAdoo, in the NBA with the NBA champion Warriors. But I don't know where Odom from Indiana State went or the rest of those players. But we just messed up a tad. So forgive us for that. But we're back on track now. And we're going to talk about the last 2 draft workouts, Rhett, that really just happened. It's happened in the past week and a half.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the 5th one. This one was highlighted by the SEC big men. And one of them you're very fond of. It seems like you're changing your mind every day on who the Pacers should draft at number 11. But this was a fully filled class here trying out 6 guys. We had Trey Lyles from Kentucky. We had LSU's Jordan Mickey, Wyoming's Larry Nance Jr., and Arkansas's Bobby Portis. Rhett, it's safe to say that out of these actually 5 guys, that Trey Lyles was the shot in the spotlight after it was all said and done. Although
He was.
LSU's Jordan Mickey and Arkansas's Bobby Portis also are solid players, and Bobby Portis has been thrown around that possible 11th pick for the Pacers too. I saw him play a little bit. Just like I did with Trey Lyles with Kentucky, unfortunately, a lot. They're both solid players, but you like the hometown kid, and I think the Pacers did too. What do you think?
Hometown Hero 2.0.
Wow.
What can I say?
I like how you did that. That's nice.
Thank you. You know, I think he would draw a ton of attendance, increase the Pacers' attendance, and, you know, he's a great player too. And, you know, killed 2 birds with 1 stone. The Pacers have lacked attendance the past few years. They haven't got their numbers that they wanted. And, you know, that could potentially have a little sellout.
It could. Excuse me, it was only those 4 guys. Go ahead, Rhett.
What?
I was just clearing that up. It was only 4 guys, not 5. It was those 4.
Sounds good. Yeah, but, I mean, who doesn't want a sellout crowd? And, you know, he could bring either bench play or, you know, maybe he even has a shot at starting with this new small lineup. But, you know, in my opinion, he would be great for the Indiana Pacers.
Yeah, and, you know, he's a solid player. He is, Trey Lyles. He was Mr. Basketball in Indiana. in 2014. That doesn't hurt. But basically, he averaged 8.7 points and 5.2 rebounds per game. Okay, those aren't eye-popping numbers, but I will say that I think he has a lot more offensive upkeep, basically potential, I'll say is the right word, than Willie Cauley-Stein does. He's also just as big and is a great defender too, so I'll give him that. But honestly, to me, if I were to look at this fifth pre-draft workout, the guy who stands out to me is Bobby Portis. He averaged 17.5 points per game at Arkansas and almost 9 rebounds per game as a sophomore. This guy was the player of the year in the SEC last year. He is a solid 6'11" with a 7'2" wingspan, and he is an extremely versatile athlete. Basically, because the one question mark I'd have with him is to see what he does. He's a solid shooter. It's underrated. For crying out loud, he knocked down 47% just about from behind the three-point arc. That's the versatility you want out of a big man. But the thing with him is, in college, he didn't post up a lot because of the Razorback system. So that's the one area you would just wonder, okay, when he gets to the transitions to the NBA, would his post game be good enough to score at the next level? That would be the one question mark I'd have to see. But I think that he is a more all around versatile player than Trey Lyles is. So out of this draft, I would like Bobby Portis more. But let's face it, these other two guys were great too. Jordan Mickey from LSU was first team All-SEC and an SEC defensive team, and he was a sophomore too. He averaged 15 points per game. He led the conference in rebounding at about 10 per game, and he led the nation in block shots at 3.5 per game. Those are solid stats right there, Rhett. And he is. He measured just over 6'8" at the combine, but he has a 7'3" wingspan. And in 2 years, he blocked 219 shots in college. That is unheard of. You want to talk about a player that the Pacers might need, especially when you're talking about going and playing smaller next year. How about a man who can block that many shots and can score on offense and is a great defender and is perfect size to play that power forward position / center for the Pacers' smaller style next year, Rhett?
Exactly.
So what did you think about these other two guys? Would you be upset if the Pacers took one of these other guys instead of Trey Lyles?
Really, if I told you before, I'm behind anything that the Indiana Pacers do.
You believe in them.
They're going to make they're going to make the right decision, I feel like. We're going to end this little streak of not getting good players in the draft. And we have the 11th pick. We're going to do just like we did with Reggie. We're going to have another great player come out of that 11th pick. So, those two players are great players, but in my personal opinion, I just like Trey Lyles more.
And that's respectable.
And he did play behind two great players at Kentucky, so he couldn't be the shining star.
No, he couldn't. So we both have a different player we liked out of this draft. That's okay. Either way, I'm with you. I do trust what the Indiana Pacers would do because I think they put so much preparation into it because it's so crucial. By the way, Rhett, how about the draft being next Thursday? It's coming up.
How exciting is that?
It is. So getting down to business, and let's talk about this last guy really quick here. Obviously was on the short end of the stick out of these four guys. Larry Nance Jr. from Wyoming. He's a guy who the reason he's underlooked a little bit, even though he had good numbers, is he played at a smaller school. And you would just have to wonder. You always have to wonder about that when you transition to the next level. He did average 16 points, 7 rebounds, and over a block per game as a senior. So that's a good stat line, and that earned him first team All Mountain West and a conference co-defensive player of the year. Not too bad right there. And he helped his Cowboys advance to the NCAA tournament for the first time since 2000-2001. So he had some good accomplishments, but he does have a lot to prove. And he had that chip on his shoulder. And he came from a guy. He came from a family where his father played in the NBA, and his father was pretty darn successful as well. Basically, 13 years with the Suns and the Cavaliers, and defeated Dr. J in the '84 NBA Slam Dunk Contest. That's not too bad, if you ask me. So he's a guy who would be lower on the list, but I don't know, Rhett. Just really would be a question mark for me. Out of this draft workout, I think those SEC big men certainly highlight it.
Yeah, and I'd like to throw one thing out, just because we're in the talk of the 11th pick. There has been news that just came out that the Indiana Pacers could be trading their 11th pick away for Mason Plumlee.
Wow. Breaking news in here. I'm glad you brought that to the table. I just recently saw something about how the Pacers, trade scenarios. It kind of, we'll talk a little bit more about this in the Roy Hibbert section, but I kind of was seeing this thing happen with, the possibility of us getting, the whole Roy Hibbert situation and who could we trade in the offseason, and, if we're going to get anybody, is it going to be, us happen to sacrifice that 11th pick to get someone? And, maybe it will. Let's talk about that a little bit more in that segment, but that's interesting. I'm glad you brought that to the table. But basically, there's the 5th pre-draft workout. SEC Big Man highlighted it for sure. Rhett likes the hometown kid, Trey Lyles. I like Bobby Portis out of them from Arkansas. But really, you'd have to trust the Indiana Pacers. So let's see how that goes. And let's get to their last pre-draft workout. This was just 3 days ago. And this was my favorite one. Why not save the best for last? Frank the Tank Kaminsky highlighted this pre-draft workout and impressed the Indiana Pacers, and there is a lot of talk that I've seen on a lot of draft boards that he has moved into that 11th spot for the Indiana Pacers. The big man impressed. I love him, but this was highlighted by these six players. Miles Turner, a guy that has been coming up a lot, and you have liked, Rhett, Texas. Frank Kaminsky, Wisconsin. You had Penn State's DJ Newbill, Arizona's TJ McConnell. I saw a lot of play from him past year. UC Davis's Corey Hawkins and Villanova's Deron Hilliard. Basically, none of these guys touched or impressed this workout or even came close to the Miles Turner and Frank Kaminsky, because really they were feeding them the ball. The Indiana Pacers were interested in seeing these big men as they're right around that 11th pick, Rhett.
Yeah, and the big thing is that Miles Turner and Frank Kaminsky, they were battling. They were battling hard in this. And, there's talk that Frank Kaminsky wants to play for Indiana.
There is, and that doesn't hurt. It seems like he's really getting acquainted quite well with the organization, especially after this pre-draft workout. A lot of talks. Maybe it'll happen. I hope it does. Let's face it. Frank the Tank Kaminsky will be a great player at this next level. I see it in him. He averaged almost 19 points per game at Wisconsin. That was in playing 34 minutes per game. He averaged over 8 rebounds a game and 1.5 blocks per game, and he shot 42% from downtown, and he was a 78% free throw shooter last year. This is a versatile big man. I was just talking about how Bobby Portis is a versatile big man. How about Frank the Tank Kaminsky, the 7-footer, is a very, very versatile big man. He could end up being the best 3-point shooter on the Pacers team. He legitly was the Wisconsin's 3-point leader, and he's the big man. And yet he couldn't be stopped down low. His post moves are like none that I've seen from a college big man in recent years. He is a guy who I think will be has extreme talent and will be extremely successful at this next level. The one thing with Frank Kaminsky that I would, if I had to put any question mark there, it would be to beef up a little bit. But he could
use to beef up.
He could use to beef up, but he is bigger, and he has more beef than Zeller did coming out of college, and does not have and Zeller's ended up fine in the NBA, and Zeller had a lot of issues, and he still does, with ducking that shoulder and not going up strong and struggling with those post moves, and Kaminsky does not. He is a solid post player. I just see him being he immediately stood out, and when I saw that that he would love to come play, and that Vogel and Bird were impressed with how he looked, it just made me happy that the Frank the Tank might happen.
But I have a question for you, Kyle.
Shoot.
Who's out of all the pre-draft workouts, give me your top 4 that you would like the Indiana to draft.
My top 4. Okay, well, I'm going to have to say for sure first round. I'm going to go, and I'm going to say Frank Kaminsky. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say Bobby Portis. I'm going to say Kelly Oubre Jr., and I'm going to say Miles Turner. Those are my top 4. I threw in the guard because Kelly Oubre Jr. is a solid guard. After looking at the numbers and going back and looking at some of his tape, I see what the Pacers see in him, but I just don't want the Pacers to pick a guard in the first round, especially with the new style that's coming. They still, with the whole Roy Hibbert situation, they need that big man, especially with how big man loaded it is in the first round. That's my top 4, Rhett. What about you?
Awesome. Well, I think Trey Lyles is a one that it's kind of a gamble, because the simple fact you didn't really get to experience the full thing on him. But I will put him in my top 4 as my number 3, but I'll give you my number 1 right now. It's a hard one, but I'd say Miles Turner is right there. We got Frank the Tank right behind him. Trey Lyles, and then Kelly Oubre.
Wow.
It's a battle between those two. Frank Kaminsky really, at that last pre-draft workout, he kind of opened my eyes a little bit and shown his potential. But those two, I'll tell you what, those two are battlers.
They really were.
What?
They really were.
It was pretty much a tie between those. I would love to see an Indy native come and play for Indiana. That's one of my main reasons. I like Trey Lyles, and he's a great player, but I would love to see the Pacers get somebody that's really going to hammer it out. And Frank Kaminsky, he did show him that's for sure.
Exactly.
And both of them really did.
And that's the problem with Trey Lyles. I wouldn't call him a great player. I don't see a great player in him. And his stats didn't shout out great player to me.
Well, I'm sorry if
he
played on.
He did, and that's not his fault, but it does make you wonder, is he a great player?
It does make you wonder.
And that's what he's certainly a good player, but I don't know if I would call him a great player because I just didn't see enough of it from him in college. I also like the experience that Frank Kaminsky brings to the draft as he stayed in college longer. He had more time to develop his game, so there's pluses there for me. But nonetheless, it was in this 6th draft workout, it was about these two men. They didn't even, there wasn't even much on the other 4 guys because they talked so much about these two. So even though those other guys were good players, in college, you can expect that not one of them would be mentioned on the Pacers draft board, certainly in the first round.
Yeah, but I would say that my top four keeps, it has rotated quite a bit, but tell you what, they keep showing the Indiana Pacers why they want to play for them, and watching their game tape, it's just phenomenal. Tell you what, Frank, he could be something, but who knows? Everybody can be something.
That's right.
And it's who's gonna perform the best, and that's what I want to see.
I agree. I want to see that too. It'll be interesting to see, but they completed their sixth and final pre-draft workout. The NBA draft is next Thursday. Tune in, Pacers fans. This is a big one. We have to put a lot of trust in Larry Bird and this Pacers organization because the right decision has to be made here. Whether that is with getting the right pick in with the 11th and the 41st, or it's trading the 11th to get a right player for this team, that's a big decision to make, Rhett, and we can transition right into that right now because that's our next segment here as we discuss trade situations for Roy Hibbert if he opts in, the whole situation. Basically, Rhett, I want to talk about a little bit more of what you just mentioned with that, the Pacers possibly doing that. So what do you think about that? If the Pacers were to trade this 11th pick, what do you think?
I don't think they should trade the 11th pick. And I think the only way that anybody would even consider picking up Roy Hibbert is if they had the 11th pick attached to that.
I agree.
And
that's
because nobody wants Roy Hibbert right now. And, who doesn't want the 11th pick in the draft, especially when it's stacked?
Exactly.
I mean, just like Frank Vogel came out and said yesterday, it's like they got a 3 to 4 pick in the draft because it's just loaded.
That's right. That's exactly right. It would be interesting to me. And you mentioned, was it Miles Plumlee or Mason Plumlee that you read that there was a rumor?
Mason.
Yeah.
Mason.
And what do you think about that and not his brother?
I don't like it. I liked Miles Plumlee when he sat on the bench for the Indiana Pacers.
Yeah.
And I said he was going to be something.
Yeah.
They really messed up on that one.
They did.
They really messed up on that one. And, nobody wants Roy Hibbert. They came out and said that they can't even get anybody for him. So he's either, they can't even try and trade him unless he opts in.
Exactly.
And from the looks of it, they don't want him to opt in.
They don't, but
they expect him to.
They do, because here's the thing. Roy Hibbert is unlikely to be moved because of all the signs pointing to him opting in, because he's guaranteed $14.8 million this next year. That is why the man is all signs pointing to opting in, not to mention the fact that there may not be teams that want him. So in his mind, he may be thinking it just has to happen. But basically, here's the thing. President Larry Bird does believe, along with David West, that they're locks to return this next season in a Pacers uniform too. So it's interesting beyond that, because here's the thing. He can opt in this year or out, but that would be so for one more year. But his future beyond that, this is where a lot of talk comes into it. He would become an unrestricted free agent after that. And that's when the best chance of seeing him leave the Pacers would be, because he doesn't have if he would want to get traded, because his contract would be up, and then it's all right. He's free to sign with another team. The Pacers most likely would not match it, and bye Hibbert.
Freeze up $15 million.
Yep.
For the Indiana Pacers. That right there, that could be a game changer right there. And one team that I've seen want Roy Hibbert and has has money to pick him up would be the Milwaukee Bucks. And that right there is the only team that I have seen that would actually look into getting him.
Exactly. Well, here's the thing. Basically, Roy, the problem is, and why they're expecting him to opt in, is because no team is going to give up anything of value for Roy Hibbert based on his performance but also
They'll get him the ball boy.
Exactly, but also the fact that he can leave the following summer, that it may just be a one-year thing, and I just don't think a team is going to do that. So you think that he really almost has to opt in order to be traded, as we were talking about. He can't be traded, and his side, they're protecting. They have a protection that's been negotiated in his deal for this whole situation about if he opts in and one more summer, and because he's in a tough situation, and he can't be traded if he decides that he wants to opt in. I mean, Rhett, I just don't see it. I don't see it happening because of the money he's going to make, and I think he's thinking about when his salary ends the next summer. Maybe he's thinking, I have one more year to prove it. But let's face it, with him opting in, I just don't see him leaving. I have to change it. As much as I do want to see it happen because I think it's time for change, as much as Hibbert's been great for this Pacers organization, I just don't see it anymore. The thing with Roy Hibbert is I just truly don't see him leaving because of the money he's going to be making this next year, and the fact that whoever would maybe offer him a deal when he opts in to be traded, it's not going to be nearly in the ballpark he's going to want. And for that reason, I just don't see it happening. Do you agree?
Exactly. I agree. Who would turn down that big of a contract?
Especially when this has been his city. I mean, this has been his place of residence for the last 6-7 years.
Yeah. And, nobody wants him. That's the thing. The fan base doesn't even want him. He got booed at the end of the game, the last home game. So, you have to see in that aspect, does he want to come back to that type of place? Because he's already came out and said that during the season that, he's not happy. So, it's really got to play that factor. Is money really the issue here, or should I take a pay cut, a very, very big pay cut, and go play somewhere else? Because he would get picked up if he took a pay cut, no doubt. But
no doubt.
Yeah, but does he want to take the pay cut? That's the thing.
Exactly, because I'm telling you right now, I don't see a team offering him more than $10 million, and that's a stretch. I think I would even say he's almost looking at half of what he'd be making for us, about $7.5 million. Someone may offer him, and they probably wouldn't offer it for as long as he'd like. I think because of how inconsistent he would be, I think someone would look for no more than a 3-year deal with him, maybe only 2. And I just don't think that he would be interested at all in that. So it's going to be interesting to see, but let's face it, the man is sucking up the Indiana Pacers salary cap. This next year, the Pacers are looking at this next year of having about a $63.5 million salary cap with all the salaries, and that's not including a couple of the players that the Pacers may sign back. They're going to be pressed for money, Rhett. They're just not going to have it. Let's face it, last year they were at 75, but it ended up being 63 because of this whole luxury tax and Larry Bird situation, which I don't know if you knew this. I actually really didn't know this, but apparently, obviously, everyone understands what the salary cap is. It's the players' salaries. It's set at a certain amount. It's based on the percentage of the projected league revenue. But it's a soft cap, and there's different mechanisms that teams can use to go over, and the most notable one is the Larry Bird exception. This allows teams to exceed the cap when re-signing their own free agents. So teams
did you say the Larry?
It's called the Larry Bird exception, baby. And so this means teams can spend above the cap without penalty up to a certain point if they're re-signing their own free agents. And Indiana had several of those last year, which is why they were able to stay right around the projected the salary cap for the league, which last year it was $67 million. So $67 million, Rhett, for the Indiana Pacers when they're already at $63.5 and still a couple players to sign, Rhett, they're not going to have much money left with Roy Hibbert staying.
No. He's sucking up that salary cap like a Slurpee, that's for sure.
He sure is, just like a good old Slurpee pop. And I tell you what, it hurts the Indiana Pacers because, it leaves you to wonder what options can they do this offseason. We were talking about them getting another legitimate offseason pickup of a big man. They're not going to be able to afford that with West and Hibbert coming back. And that's one of the issues there. That's where you look at, okay, the draft is huge. So you look at their draft being their biggest offseason move. Or you look at the fact of if they did trade that 11th pick, who could they get for it? That seems to be the only situation for the Indiana Pacers right now, Rhett, as far as what's going to happen here in the offseason, because that's all they're going to be able to afford. They're going to go over the luxury tax for anything else. And that would mean some serious fines, and I just don't see that happening. They just don't have the money. So it will be interesting to see what happens with it, but that's really what I see the scenario being for the Indiana Pacers is Roy Hibbert opting in and them being pressed tight for money. That means this draft is everything. Let me tell you this, Rhett. I don't know if you heard this, but there is talks about this from Adam Silver and the NBA executives and owners. There is talks that the league salary cap is expected to balloon after next year to $108 million.
Yeah.
A $22 million increase, Rhett. Between 2 years, they're looking to go from $67 million to $89 million. Can you imagine what that's going to do? That means heading into 2016, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Kevin Love, Dwayne Wade, Anthony Davis, and several others. And how about the year after that this would take place? Dwight Howard, Derrick Rose, Blake Griffin, Russell Westbrook, and Steph Curry, all going to be free agents. And I know you brought this up in a past show, salary caps and should they be lowered to make it even for the teams and make it more fair? Well, this would completely give other teams the advantage, right? What would you think about this?
Well, I don't know if it would really give an advantage to any other team because once you think of it like this, LeBron's going to be asking for a max contract, no doubt. Anthony Davis is going to be asking for a max contract. So this might actually bring it back into not having tons of superstars on your team. And, everybody's going to be looking for a pay increase because the salary cap is going up. And, we're seeing with Jimmy Butler right now, he doesn't want a long-term contract because of the salary cap to go up, and he'll be able to get more money.
Exactly. So, I don't know. Here's where I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing from the Indiana Pacers standpoint. A little smaller market team, you get a higher salary cap. That means that you have more money to spend on some top free agents out there, right? And we just mentioned some of the big names. That's a key. That's a good thing because the Pacers have been tight for money with the players they have on this roster that was built. What I don't like is I don't know if I fully agree with you that it wouldn't create more unfairness because for a team that's stacked, like you look at what the Cleveland Cavaliers did, if you give them an extra $22 million to sign another star, I see them doing that.
As you see with LeBron James, he has a player option this year top back in, and that means that after that year he's able to get that pay increase, and no doubt he's going to be asking for a max contract. So that's the reason why he set that up like that, so he can get more money with this increase. So that's where I see it. It's going to make it harder for them to sign more people on the team. Just like Kobe got paid $24 million, pretty much sucked up their whole salary cap. That's what LeBron James is going to do, I believe. So
yeah,
it's going to be interesting.
It will. It will be interesting. What's interesting for the Pacers, you look beyond. This is where the Pacers in the near future, we're talking after next year with the whole Roy Hibbert situation, especially if this increase in the salary cap for teams happens, you're going to be looking at the Pacers having some serious available funds to get some good players, because beyond Roy Hibbert next year, the biggest financial burden that the Pacers have to take on is Paul George's $70 million guaranteed for the 5-year contract he signed last year. So aside from that, Rhett, the Pacers are going to have some serious money. The only other player that is locked in beyond next year is C.J. Miles for the 2017-28 season. So he's locked in for including this upcoming year, 3 more years. Aside from that, it's just Paul George. So the Pacers are going to have some serious available money.
Yeah.
That's going to be very key. I'm going to look forward to seeing what happens with that. But it starts this year, and if Roy Hibbert opts in, we have to accept that. Then we also have to accept the right thing has to be done in this draft, because that's essentially it. And Rhett, unless trading the 11th pick involved getting an amazing star in this league or something crazy, I just don't see it happening, and I don't want to see it happening. Do you agree?
I agree. I don't want to see it happen either. I think it'd be very stupid if they signed away or traded away their 11th pick.
Agreed. So it'll be interesting to see again what happens with that. But it is going to be interesting with the Pacers going forward again next Thursday. It is coming up, Rhett. It is coming up, so it will be interesting, to say the least. Pacers fans, we have a special guest with us today, my brother, TJ Neumann, joining us from Gilbert, Arizona, the West Coast. How are you doing today, TJ?
I'm doing good, bud. I'm glad to be on the show with you and be a part of this great Pacers podcast show.
Hey, Rhett, we have our second guest on this show. This is exciting.
I know, it's exciting.
Your old pal, my brother.
Yeah, we've had some good times.
Yes, you have. You definitely have. TJ, you been doing good? You ready to talk some Pacers basketball?
Oh, I'm ready to get to it like there's nothing to it.
All right. That's great. That's what we like to hear. Well, we're going to start with a question about the star for the Indiana Pacers, and that's Paul George. And as everyone knows, he suffered a horrific leg injury last August with Team USA. How do you think he will look for the Pacers in his first full season back after recovery, TJ?
Well, here's the thing. Paul George, we all know he's an amazing player. There is nothing in my mind that doubts that he can come back and be just as successful and on the same path that he was on previous to his injury. Now, however, that doesn't mean that's what's going to happen. As far as Paul George, pretty much we're going to have to sit back and wait and see how this whole ordeal will pan out.
Do you think that he will come back and immediately, because he's had this offseason to recover, do you think he'll immediately look like the old Paul George, or do you see it taking several months for him to get back to regular form?
Oh, it will definitely take some time. I mean, let's be real. No one can come back with a crucial injury like that. And let's be real. Who has ever came back from a long time out of the season, 1 year plus? I mean, look how Derrick Rose came back. And look at him now. He went back out again, if not 2 more times, for other injuries. And now you don't see him in the finals.
You don't. Now, here's what I'm going to comment on about this, CJ. He broke his leg gruesomely, and in 7 months, he was able to return to the Pacers for 6 games and almost got this team into the playoffs. It was really remarkable. Did he look like the old Paul George? No. But what he did look like was a player who is on his way. He had his moments. You could tell that he was nervous about trying to dunk and land on that leg. The breakaways, Rhett and I have talked about that. We've talked a lot about Paul George and what we see, what we expect. But if there's one thing that's for sure, he works just as hard as any star in the league. And I kind of told Rhett that I see Paul George not coming back and being his immediate self, although that's what I hope for. But I see him coming back and at least being the key player on this team again, to where we can count on at least 15 points from him. And I would go as far as I would say maybe 2 months in tops, I expect Paul George to be back to his old self. And I'm talking MVP candidate, because that's where he left off before his injury. Rhett, what do you think?
I think exactly. I kind of think it's disrespectful of you to compare him to Derrick Rose. But, it's a different type of injury, and he will come back a little healthier. He's already came back for 6 games. Derrick Rose pushed everything off, and, I can see the difference between the two. Paul George has that readiness and willing to put it all on the line, and that's why I think that he's going to transition very well at the start of the season.
No doubt.
Go ahead,
Go
TJ.
ahead. Oh, I appreciate that. Hey, no doubt Paul George has got what it takes to come back. That is nothing that anyone will try to doubt. I mean, look at him. Even in that last 6 games, he was scoring 40%, shooting 40% from three-point line. Like, coming off an injury like that, hey, he can get to the place where he wants to be, and, that's going to be finals next year. Who knows?
It's impressive. Well, that kind of leads into my next question for you, TJ, and that is, how high do you see the Indiana Pacers getting in the Eastern Conference? Do you think they can get to the top 3 in the East? What I want to just kind of know what your prediction is. Who do you think may finish ahead of them? What do you think it's going to take for Indiana to get back to the top of the East like they were before his injury, battling out with the Heat every single year?
Well, here's what it's going to take. It's going to take the same amount, if not more, dedication and heart that he put in those last 6 games and previous to the injury. I expect that he will come out with fire, ready to shoot, ready to play ball hard. And as far as the teams that are going to be pulling ahead of them, you're definitely going to see the Heat up there. See them in the finals? No. I see them going out early on in the playoffs, but I do see them making that stretch to the playoffs. I personally don't see them pursuing much more, but hey, it's still an accomplishment.
So who do you see finishing ahead of Indiana in the East?
In the East, I'm going to have to say that Cleveland, depending on this season, I mean, they're definitely going to be coming back with the same mentality, whether they win or lose, going to be coming back ready to take down the East.
Agreed.
I mean, let's be real. And then I see the Heat.
What about the Bulls?
Bulls.
Do you see the Bulls being ahead of the Pacers or
no?
Not?
I do not. I think Pacers can come back and outperform the Bulls any day of the week, and hands down.
Boom!
Okay,
Baby,
I gotta tell you, my co-host here
is a Bulls
thinks these
fan.
are asinine statements, TJ, and I'm gonna let him go off on you a little. Go ahead, Rhett.
Can you name your 3 again, please?
The Heat, Cleveland, and Indiana.
Preposterous. The Heat are be lucky to make the playoffs.
And why do you say that, Rhett?
Well, first of all, more than likely won't have Dwayne Wade back next year. Chris Bosh, he's going to have a rocky start. And Gordon Dragic is more than likely going to be continuing playing for them, but I don't see them having anybody better than that. And for them not even making the playoffs this year, they will not be better than that. They'll be an average team. Now, the Cleveland Cavaliers, I do believe that they will be the top 3 teams. But not putting the Bulls, that is just disrespectful. And, oh my.
You know it's disrespectful? The city wasting money on a player who will never bring a championship to Chicago. That is disrespectful.
If you look back at last season, you can show, especially at the end of the season, the stats that Derrick Rose is putting up. Great numbers. And if he stays healthy, turning his game into something different than what he's used to, not being that physical down low, he's going to be a great player and a great leader for that Chicago team. And
comparing? Okay, so same situation with Paul George coming back. What do you see for Paul George?
I don't see Indiana being a top 3 team. I see Indiana being a 4 to 5 seed, but I do not see them being a top 3 teams in the Eastern Conference.
Why is that, Rhett? Fill TJ in.
And that is because, first of all, it's going to take, I would say it's going to take him at least a month to get back going. And the Eastern Conference, they're starting to get, they're going to be turned around this year, and you got great teams. Wizards, they're on the rise. The Hawks are another great team. I don't think that's a fluke. You got the Chicago Bulls, and you got the Cleveland Cavaliers.
The Bucks are on the rise.
Yeah, and the Bucks are on the rise also. What a great young team. And I don't see Indiana being a top 3 team because of that. There's too much talent out there, and especially if Roy Hibbert signs again, I don't think there's going to be a chance for them to get a 3 seed. As an Indiana Pacers fan, I'm just talking realistic.
Hey.
And we can respect realistic.
Absolutely.
We can always agree to disagree. That's the beautiful thing about sports. Rhett, you have a couple questions here for TJ as we continue this discussion, kind of switch gears.
I do like eggs and ham. Sam, I am.
That's a good one. I like that.
All right. What did you think of Reggie Miller as a player?
Well, Reggie Miller speaks for himself. Look at all of his stats. The one game alone of scoring, 11 in the last 30 seconds? That right there should tell you how great of a player he was, or it should summarize it.
You betcha.
Reggie Miller is a fantastic player. Skills, hands down, amazing. And the one plus that Reggie Miller has that we all know is his trash talking.
That's right.
And it brings results too. You can't argue with that.
You can't.
Yeah.
And he's also a Hall of Famer. And quickly, in our minds, obviously went down and it kind of leads into the next question that Rhett will ask, but it quickly led into a conversation we've had on previous shows about rings defining a career legacy or not, and he's the prime example. Rhett, speak a little more about that.
All right. Well, first of all, I agree, great player. But my last question is, do you think rings alone define a player's career legacy?
No, I do not think their career is defined by the amount of rings they hold. There are plenty of players out there in the NBA that have been fantastic players that have never brought a ring home. Does not define the legacy, who they are. Sometimes, you can't make it to the championship. How can one player take an entire team? It happens some years, but you consistently bringing an entire team to the playoffs by one player, most of the time, not realistic.
All right, yeah, that's understandable. Now my for superstars, like LeBron level, Carmelo Anthony, soon to be, Steph Curry, he's at superstar level. for those types of players that are in that high caliber, I think rings matter, especially if you're comparing them to be one of the greatest basketball players to ever walk this face of the earth, then yes, I think rings do matter. Now, for somebody like above average, he was a superstar, but it doesn't really. I mean, it doesn't affect them. I feel like, in my own opinion, it's not as high priority for them. In my opinion, for them. I mean, you can still be a great player and make it into the Hall of Fame and not have a ring. But if you're at that superstar level and you want to be one of the greatest basketball players to ever walk this face of the earth, damn right you better have a ring.
All right, what if we compromise on this last little bit right here, and we compromise to say no, players are not defined by the rings, how many rings they have. I will make the teams accountable for how many rings they have.
Thank you. I am on the standpoint where I disagree with Rhett a little bit, and we've had a couple debates about it. I took the stance that you first did, TJ. It's a short and simple answer for me right off the bat. No, it doesn't, because we just got done mentioning a Hall of Fame legend in Reggie Miller, our favorite player all time. Never had a ring, but he led the Indiana Pacers, and he was the heart and soul of the team. And he got them consistently to the playoffs and would fight and did what he could, and yet he never got a ring. There's plenty of Hall of Famers who didn't, but he's still a superstar Hall of Fame player. And I think that my stance is there's much more that goes into it. It's not just one player that wins that team a championship. It's a team aspect. So that's where I would agree with you also on that, TJ. It's a team aspect. Then there's a much more that goes into it from the aspect of defining a career legacy. I look at, okay, how is this player known on and off the court? Where do they stand in the statistical categories? How did they lead this team? Were they the best player on this team? There's a lot that goes into it to me, and that's why I say no. Absolutely not. And you look at like LeBron, MJ, different era, different players on the different teams. So it's hard
also
to
had
that.
Strong players, a system to get to the goal. Without a good team, a solid team, you will not have the foundation to win a championship. Plain and simple.
Absolutely.
No matter how good of one player you have, or if you are that good player and you are on a sucky team, you should not be defined. The team should be held accountable for the amount of rings they lack, not the players.
Exactly. And here's the point that I made to Rhett, and I'll let Rhett jump in here. I know he has some stuff to say. This was the point I made, and we talked about this. We actually had our first comments on the show about a Boston fan, and when he chimed in and we were talking about this debate of do rings define an NBA player's career legacy, we brought up Reggie Miller and how he has no rings, but yet Ray Allen has 2 rings. But Ray Allen was a different player on a different team, and he did not lead his teams to getting those rings. Was he clutch? Yes. Does he lead the all-time three-point categories? Yes. But I would still take Reggie Miller over Ray Allen any day. And yes, there's a little bias in there with the Pacers and Reggie Miller. But my point being that, you're looking at 2 players, one with rings, one with not. Their legacies were not defined on that because they were both Hall of Fame superstar players, right? And I actually made the case that I would not call Ray Allen a superstar. He made big shots, but I would not call him a superstar.
I would not call Reggie Miller a superstar either.
And I would disagree with that.
Yes, that's a great. We can agree to disagree on that. When I categorize a superstar, I categorize LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, Steph Curry.
Okay,
all
Steph
those
Curry
types of
hasn't
players.
won a championship, so and you call him a superstar.
Oh.
Derrick
Don't
Rose,
even think about
a day.
Don't even think about throwing Derrick Rose in there.
and most people would. Before Derrick Rose's injury, Derrick Rose is a superstar. Chris Paul is a superstar. Blake Griffin's a superstar. You look, LeBron
Exactly.
James, before he won the championships, was a superstar, Rhett. And they didn't have rings, and the Clippers still do. Are you telling me you don't think Blake Griffin and Chris Paul are superstars? That's asinine.
Blake Griffin.
Point
Blake
proven,
Griffin
period.
is a superstar. When I'm saying this is, you have to. Reggie Miller at his highest point in basketball averaged 24.6 a game, and that was for one season, just one season. You go to Blake Griffin's numbers. He puts up numbers. He rebounds. He almost averages a double-double if he does not. I mean,
different
he
players
might.
in a different position in a different time.
And, I'm categorizing people that can score. I mean,
Score.
Reggie Miller was the all-time score, man.
At
But
three-pointers.
Here's the thing. I wouldn't call Reggie Miller a superstar either.
Well, that's okay.
Exactly.
We can agree to disagree on that because during that time period, you ask anybody, I guess aside from us, was Reggie Miller a superstar? They're going to tell you yes. Because
in that period.
Exactly, because they're going to tell you who was it that was always battling. You had Reggie Miller. You had Michael Jordan. You had the Bad Boy Pistons. You had the Knicks. With Patrick Ewing, the different players in the different positions. There were superstars in the game. You compare that to today's game, there is no difference in calling Reggie Miller a superstar than calling Blake Griffin a superstar because they both were in the same, different positions, but it's a comparison of why they're superstars. People are gonna say Chris Paul is a superstar. People are gonna say Derrick Rose is a superstar. They're gonna say Kyrie Irving's a superstar. Has not won a ring. In fact, made it to his first playoffs this year. Okay, so I think when we're talking about superstars, let's sit back and think what superstars are and what they mean to a team, and the face of the NBA, Reggie Miller, was that. Come on, Red, how can you be so disrespectful?
Great point made.
Not disrespectful.
Great point, Kay. Good thing we've came to a agreement to disagree.
Exactly. It's one of my favorite sayings.
It's wonderful.
It is wonderful, and we really do appreciate you taking the time, TJ, on the show today to join us. I know there's a bit of a time difference. You're a busy man. In fact, my brother, I'm very proud of him. He is a real estate agent. He has worked hard, and he is pursuing a career as a real estate agent. Who knows where it will take him, but I'm very proud of you, TJ. Keep up the good work.
Glad to. Thank you, fellas. Thank you. Glad to be a part of your team. And yes, for anyone out there, I am a realtor in sunny Gilbert, Arizona. If you need any type of real estate assistance, feel free to give me a call.
He knows what he's talking about. He may be young, but he is bright. TJ Neumann, my bro, Rhett Hensley, my co-host here. We had some good talk. We're going to get to our next segment here in just a few seconds. TJ, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You have a good day. Let's get into this last segment here, and let's talk about Paul George moving to the power forward position. This is going to be interesting. We already have talked a lot on previous shows about Paul George and moving to the 4 because the Pacers are going to a smaller, quicker style of offense. But let's face it here. Paul George, I think, would be a versatile power forward because of that word right there. He's versatile enough. He is one of the best two-way players in the game. Rhett, I want to get your thoughts on this first. What do you think, the power forward position for Paul George?
It could be very dangerous.
Ooh, interesting word. So word of the day for Rhett.
It could be very dangerous when it comes to that. It could go either way, dangerous for that other team, or it could be very dangerous for Indiana. Paul George has got to continue to bulk up, and he's got to be able to play that power forward position. You're going to be going up against some great power forwards, and very versatile. So that's what I have right there. But when it comes to that, Paul George he started out at shooting guard, and then he worked his way into small forward, and now they're asking for power forward. he is a very tall guy. I believe he's 6'9" or 6'10", and he has the height for a power forward. So he's just got to continue to bulk up, and he could be going up against people like Dwight Howard, even though he plays the center position, but you're going to be down there with them, and he's got to grab rebounds. That's going to be one of the toughest things for the Indiana Pacers when you're going up against those big superstars that can rebound, and they have that size. That's where they're going to be in trouble, and it's just got to happen with that. So the Indiana Pacers are going to have to think about that and get somebody like Tristan Thompson that can rebound if they're going to move somebody into that center spot that is that good down low. So,
indeed, I gotta tell you, you make some great points, and Paul George, man, absolutely phenomenal. Here's the thing. This is what I want to talk about here with Paul George and why I am fully confident in this move. 2-time NBA All-Star, 2-time All-NBA third team, NBA All-Defensive first team before his injury, NBA All-Defensive second team the year before that, NBA Most Improved Player, NBA All-Rookie second team. Rhett, it's safe to say that if he didn't get injured this past year, the man would have absolutely climbed another level into maybe MVP type of play. I see that in the man. I already mentioned he is one of the best two-way players in the game, one of the best defenders in the game at his position. I would be fully confident in him in this move because, let's face it, the man at 6'10", he is able to block shots and defend because he has a great wingspan. He is building. He is getting big. And he expects to come back looking like LeBron James. He can hold his own defensively as well as offensively and get to the bucket. I just see Paul George being able to adjust to the power forward position just fine, and it's largely due to his play defensively. I think offensively he'll have a... Yeah, exactly. Rebounding, too. It's
going to be a struggle for the Indiana Pacers if they move him to the power forward position and keep David West as, like a center or something like that. It's going to create some issues, especially against those big teams if they're playing like Houston or something like that. They're going to have some issues rebounding, that's for sure.
It might. It might. It would be interesting. But he's a good rebounder, and because he's lengthy enough, I think that he would develop his rebounding game because he would have to get used to banging down low there and developing that aspect of his game.
LeBron's type of rebounding down there.
Exactly, and I see him being able to do that after getting used to playing the four. Let's face it, it's going to take time. It really will, because this is something that's going to be completely new to the Pacers, completely away from their style of play. But basically... the thing is with it, I think that the biggest part where I think Paul George would have an upper hand at that power forward position is offensively. He's going to be quicker than almost every power forward he's going to be playing. Not only that, how about a power forward who can step out and splash threes like none other? You think that a power forward he's going to be going up against is going to be able to defend him out on that three-point line? And be able to defend him getting to the hoop. That's why I think that this is going to end up being brilliant. I see it working great. I also am interested to see what the lineup's going to look like. Is it going to be, depending on what happens with the trade situation, is it going to be Stuckey, Hill, Miles? Is it going to be Stuckey, Hill, Miles, George, and then, let's say, Hibbert / West on and off starting? Is that what the Pacers are looking like, or is Hibbert too big for what they're looking like at the center, and it's going to be, let's say a Stuckey, a Hill, a Miles, a George, and a West? I kind of seeing it being...
Or a George, Hill, Stuckey, C.J. Miles, Paul George, and a Frank Kaminsky.
That's right. The beautiful big man. That's what I would really take. That sounds like a great starting lineup to me, if you ask me right there. And, that would be interesting, Red. I want to talk a little bit about this here. I like CJ Miles getting the start at the small forward position. I think that would be perfect for the Pacers, being at that number 3. I think that he proved how good of a player he was last year. And can you imagine having him there in the starting lineup with Paul George being back and healthy, and him being the other best 3-point shooter on the team, and what that could do to the Pacers' offense?
Deadly. That could be deadly.
It really could. So I see it happening like that. And you know what? Paul George, he is absolutely confident in the move too. Basically, this is what Dan Feldman from NBC Sports had to say about Paul George and this move, and then I'll talk about what Paul George had to say. Basically, he said that he's strong enough to defend players there, especially as the league goes smaller, because the league is going to that. He could switch on any screen. Offensively, he'd spread the floor with his shooting. He'd have opportunities to drive against slower-footed players, which would be just lethal. And his passing would be a real asset from the 4. We didn't even talk about his passing. It might be a little bumpier for the Pacers to adjust overall, just because they've gotten so used to their style of play. But the upside is high in large part because of George. Rhett, I couldn't agree more to this statement. We just got done talking about all of those. Let's not forget how great of a passer Paul George is becoming, much like LeBron. Let's talk about that a little bit. What do you think, Paul George?
Well, he was exercising his passing a lot more when he came back for those 6 games, and I thought that was something that he really needed to work on. Assist category helps out. I'll tell you what.
It really does.
And when it comes to George Hill, he's not a true point guard. And having that person that can, in those type of situations, that if he needs to, when it's coming down to crunch time and he needs to get rid of the ball, I would like to put it into his hands if he doesn't have a shot. We got to have an excellent passer in the game, and we've seen before George Hill is not the best passer. We've seen in the playoffs and stuff like that, but it's what they need, especially from their superstar.
It is. It really is what they need. Basically, here's what he has to say about it. Basically, it's short and simple, but I like to hear it from Paul George. I'll be ready for it. When he was asked about playing the 4 next season, I'm working on making that change and being prepared to place him forward this year. Rhett, like I said, I'm fully confident in the move. I actually think it will end up turning out better for the Pacers. We're already one of the top teams in the league defensively. I think that this will help keep us there, if not move us up back to the top like we were before his injury. Offensively, I think we'll definitely improve. We struggled this year. I think we were 24th in the league offensively. That's not good. We need to improve on that. I think the draft will help with that. A healthy Paul George back, keeping Stuckey, Scola, CJ Miles being here, in the second year with the Pacers there, in Stuckey and Miles. I think that'll help. The chemistry's starting to form. That's something the Indiana Pacers need. Maybe Rodney Stuckey will become the Lance Stevenson for this
Exactly.
team. It's he has the potential there. I really think it will help, but it definitely starts with Paul George as the foundation of this team and leading this team. But basically, Rhett, it is funny. It is funny in a way to hear what Vogel has to say on this whole Bird's key for this next year about the faster tempo and playing smaller. Basically, Candace Buckner asked Coach Vogel if this new scheme means Roy Hibbert will be benched, and Vogel said possibly. Roy's role will be diminished. So, it seems as if this is going to happen, and Roy Hibbert will not be starting. And so then it brings it back immediately, and you have to wonder, well, then will he opt in? Because how will he be receptive to that? And I think it just depends on the other offers and how much of a cut is he willing to take. But if he isn't, then I just see him staying for at least another year with the Pacers because of that money. I think he also has some pretty good chemistry with the team that he's been developed with, especially with Stevenson gone. I think that this has been his home, so I think he's got his boys, and they're gonna keep his getting his back, keep having his back, and basically I think that's what in his mind is going to keep him here after those factors play in. What do you think, Rhett?
I think exactly. It really is just going to play a factor, the money situation, and then it's just going to come down to, does he want to come off the bench, and does he want to be hated by Indiana?
That's right.
That is the main factors. I'll tell you right now, I could be hated by everybody in the world for $15.5 million.
No kidding.
That right there.
No kidding.
I'll tell you what.
And let's face it, okay, before we get off here, as we finish up with the Roy Hibbert talk, I think that because he had such a decline this last year, after everyone the year before, he really started to show his struggles, and Pacers fans were like, all right, Roy Hibbert, you got to improve. I mean, enough's enough. Basically, the fact that he declined a bit this past year after his, promises in the offseason and working with Kareem the Dream, and he's going to come back MVP form, and highly disappointed, Pacers fans, with how much did Paul George being out affect you? I think with Roy
Hibbert, want to be out there.
I think with Roy Hibbert, a lot of the issue is mentally with the man, and
like your golf game.
Exactly. And he can fight through it, just like I can fight through the mental game in golf. It's taken a while, but, it can happen. And with Roy Hibbert, I think it's the yips. It's like Tiger Woods with his struggles in golf right now. I think he can get over it with some more off-season work. He has the talent. I think it's mentally with him. He's proven that he has the talent offensively. He's established his defensive talent. But he's proven what he can do for the Pacers offensively. That's why they signed him to be the franchise center. So I think that, Pacers fans, though they did boo and call for his name and did remove Area 55, that's kind of crazy to me. I think in light, a lot of that is the disappointment in the Pacers last season. And, maybe not all on Roy Hibbert's shoulders, that they're disappointed in a number of things. But, he was the scapegoat, the man they could take it out on. And quite frankly, he kind of needed to be, because he was the worst for the Pacers. He was supposed to step up. Exactly. He was supposed to step up. But as a Pacers fan, as much as I did say I think it's time to move on, I will believe in the Pacers and working with him, and I'll believe in Roy Hibbert to try and improve once again and give him another chance.
I think honestly, in my own opinion, he's gonna have a pretty good season this upcoming year, because it is contract year, and just like we saw a few years ago, he excelled when it came to contract year.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly.
I think we're going to see a pretty good season from him.
That's right. I think we will too. Well, that about does it, Rhett. Once again, and we went over, but when we're talking sports and talking Pacers, that can happen.
Exactly.
Fun times. Let the good times roll. That's what happens.
Let the good times roll.
Well, I don't know where you went with changing up the tone in your voice for that.
I did the soul style. Kidding me?
Well, on that
note,
I'm
sorry.
To recap what was talked about on the show, we talked about the final 2 draft workouts for Indiana. We discussed trade situations for Roy Hibbert if he opts in. We had an interview with my brother TJ Neumann, and we chatted about Paul George playing the powered forward position for the Pacers next season. That is all we have for today. Thank you for tuning into our show. Feel free to leave any comments. Tweet and retweet the show at Kyle M. Newman, at Rhett Hensley, and at Indiana Pacers Talk. We want that feedback. We will address it on the show. We will be back at it next Wednesday by 8 Eastern Time. I'm Kyle Neumann.
I'm Rhett Hensley.
Have a great rest of the day, and go Pacers!
Great sports talk.
Absolutely. Go blue and gold.
Go Indiana.